So how do the kids learn?
Right. So that's awesome question. So our basis is the Montessori method. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but most people aren't. So, and honestly, 3-4 years ago, I barely knew what it was. I just thought it was something weird kids did that didn't want to go to real school. So Maria Montessori, she's like this rock star in the late 1890s who comes up. She's one of the first female doctors in Italy. And she gets her MD in Italy, and they're like, hey, yeah, we're never going to let you work in a real hospital because, you're a woman. So they send her to this, ghetto apartment where they have all these kids that are running around because their parents are all in factories now. So she just starts observing the kids, right? And she starts figuring out that a way for them to learn. So if you can put the right materials in their hands, so something they can physically touch to quantify, like for math, right? If I can actually put a rod in your hand and say, this is 1, and then put another one and say, now you have 2, where you can physically now feel the difference in size and weight, it makes sense to you because you can also feel it, right? So the Montessori method is based on them being able to physically feel things, and the materials actually are designed so that children can teach themselves, right? So they get to decide at the young ages when they're learning how to read and learning, numbers and addition and subtraction, what they want to do every day. And then as they master a skill, they move on to the next and to the next and to the next. So that whole grade level thing, that was just a made up construct, right? Not a real thing, right? So I guess technically, I could be in 37th grade or whatever I would be right now. Like, it's not a thing. Right. So it's just a way to group kids that we don't do, right? Because everybody, everything, I don't know how much you know about statistics, right? But you remember the bell curve, right?
Yep.
So everything happening with a person happens on a bell curve. So you're going to have 68% of people that are within the curve, and then you're going to have your outliers, right? And that's all normal. But they designed the system that say, okay, 68% of these people are going to be within this curve, so that's the standard. Right, so they should be able to read at this point and do this at this point. But what you really have is that nobody's ever actually that average person, right, that they're designed around. So by letting people learn at their own pace, you actually let them move much farther, right? Because they don't get the stigma in their head like, oh, I can't do third grade math, so that means I'm stupid, right? And a lot of people have that in school. And the other thing that we do differently is what happens in regular school, right? You work on a task for a week. You take a test. You got a 70% on that test, right? Well, you didn't know 30% of the material. So let's say it's math, like third grade math. You take that test, you got a 70%. There were some key concepts you didn't understand, right? But now you move on. So math is additive, right? So you need those concepts in the next level. So it's like building a house on let's say you build 70% of the foundation and you're like, good enough, right? Let's build the first floor. 75%, good enough. Second floor, 78%, let's go. By the time you get to the third floor, the whole thing collapses, right? And that's what happens in regular school. So our whole foundation is based on what we call mastery. So instead of letting somebody stop when they get to 70%, we make them do it till they have mastered that skill. So basically, everybody gets to 100%. And then they go forward from there, and they go at their own pace. So what we've seen, and we've already seen it, we started doing the assessments yesterday. So what we see is maybe somebody traditionally would have been in 4th grade. We assess them. There was some skill back in 2nd grade that they never grasped. So we put them in at that level, and then they go back and they master that skill, and they're a little frustrated. But once they get that one skill they missed, they just go very fast, right? Next thing you know, they're 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. So, and it's very interesting that the traditional math and language arts skills, we only spend about an hour and a half on that a day. But using the traditional metrics, when you do standardized testing, Acton model, on average, our students are getting 2.5 years of grade level growth each year.
Because they're mastering that.
Core
concept that maybe they would have missed elsewhere.
Yeah, it's that and the fact that they're learning actually how to think and not how to answer questions to get it right on a test, right? Because most people take tests, and maybe you go back 3 weeks later, give them the same test, they're going to fail.
Right.
Right? So if you go to mastery, those skills are maintained, right? If you're going at your own pace, you actually maintain those skills. So, and then we're giving them real world applications like, why does this matter, right? And we don't just do things that don't matter, right? You talked about the periodic table of the elements, right? What value is that to memorize that? We have Google, right? But if you're going to do chemistry, you need to know how to apply that and what it all means, right? And then you can go back to Google when you want to know, okay, what's the alkali metals or alkali earth metals? What's this and how they relate to that? Like, you can go look up that chart, but once you know how to apply it, you can do anything, right?
Right.
So it's no value in the information age when I can have that answer in 5 seconds on Google to memorize that chart.